Potential Not Pathology, embracing creative and resourceful approaches to psychotherapy with author and therapist Dr. Paul J. Leslie.
Welcome to Potential Not Pathology, where we offer information and inspiration for mental health therapists who are interested in learning and applying unique therapeutic techniques and concepts into their work, with a focus on the potential each client brings to his or her therapy session. This program examines ideas and tools which can assist your clients on their journey toward healing. I'm Paul J. Leslie, and I'm glad you're here. I'm really excited today to offer to you just a fantastic interview I had with such a dear friend of mine. He and I got to spend a good bit of time, not enough time, but a good bit of time together at the recent Ericksonian Approaches to Psychotherapy and Hypnosis Congress in Phoenix a little while back in December 2015. And every time I'm with him, I learn so much. His name's Richard Hill. If you haven't heard of Richard Hill, you're going to eventually hear a lot about Richard Hill. He's doing wonderful work. Richard Hill is a therapist, author, and a specialist in the dynamics of human behavior, communication, and the mind. He's a former professional actor, and presently he is the president of the Global Association of Interpersonal Neurobiology Studies. He's also a member of the International Psychosocial Genomic Research Team and the director of the Mind Science Institute in Sydney, Australia. Richard has such a wonderful ability to take concepts from neurobiology, anthropology, obviously psychotherapy, just blend them to make them so easy to use, so easy to understand. And he's just a fascinating guy, And he just exudes enthusiasm because he truly loves his work. And this comes through on the interview. And Richard and I just could have talked probably for days. Some important things that he talks about a lot of stuff, but important things to pay attention to is in this interview is he speaks a good bit about his curiosity approach. Now, to me, this approach that he's talking about, this is a really important aspect to learning to open up possibilities in therapy, in a therapy session. And by just simply using this concept of curiosity, I think that it's a lot easier to transform a lot of our session. Sometimes when we are feeling stuck, the element of curiosity can do so much. He also talked about his what he calls his winner-loser world theory, and this is very simple, but it's very profound in seeing how people literally make themselves crazy looking at the world through this winner-loser frame. We talk a good bit about his work with the wonderful Dr. Ernest Rossi, brilliant psychotherapist, neurobiologist, an amazing individual. And also Richard's interest in the field of neuroscience and how all of this pertains to helping us become better therapists. So I think you're going to get a great deal out of this interview. And so without further ado, I invite you to spend a little time with me and the wonderful Richard Hill. Richard Hill, welcome to Potential Not Pathology.
Thank you very much, Paul. I am so glad to be here. It's really good.
Okay. I wanted to start, as I usually do, with anytime I ask somebody to talk to me about therapy, I always want to know their background. And your background coming to therapy is unique.
So, yes. It's taken a slightly different path than the usual. I suppose therapy is almost the thing that made sense of most of my life, becoming a psychotherapist. I actually graduated from high school with university scholarships and various things, but somehow there was a little card and it said, what are you going to be? And all my friends were writing doctor and lawyer and things. And my hand, which is perfect now for the Ernest Rossi work I do with mirror hands, my hand on its own wrote actor. And so I actually went off and I was an actor for a fully professional, full-time actor for 25, nearly 30 years. And then things started to wane a bit, and I became to a point where I thought, well, I'll expand myself, and I'm interested. I read Steven Pinker's book, The Language Instinct, and I thought, yeah, the brain, the language, I talk a lot. So I went to university. I spent a long time, 7 years, doing a Bachelor of Arts, but I studied all kinds of things, anthropology, philosophy, and I thought, yeah, I came out counseling, that'd be good. I did that, and then it made sense. I went to the Evolution of Psychotherapy conference at the Milton Erickson Foundation, and the first speaker I heard was a man named Ernest Rossi, who I immediately fell in love with, and my jaw hit the floor at the same time. And a little while later I said to Jeff Zeig, I'd love to talk here. And he said, you have to have a master's degree. So I said, oh, okay, we'll go get one of those. So naive. Anyway, I went back, and again, I got more involved. Ernest Rossi took me under his wing. The Erickson Foundation did support me in my lecturing. And I'm now here at my 11th Erickson conference with 3 master's degrees and a brand new theory of approach to therapy, which I call the curiosity approach. And life is pretty exciting.
It sounds like it. This has been the best how I came to therapy story I've heard. So,
Oh, by the way, I lost a fortune twice.
Okay, well there you go.
Just on the way, just to fill in the sad sack part of it.
Well, you're perfect to be a therapist then, known for the great wealth.
That's right. Yes, I'm trying to replenish my finances.
So one thing I'm just so excited about, because I got to sit in today on your wonderful presentation on the curiosity approach, and I just, I can't wait till we make this a more multi-day kind of thing, because I think there's so much to it. Will you, the best you can, kind of summarize how you came to this approach and why you think it's so fundamental to change?
Yeah, it's because it's a good question. By nature, I always ask the other question. It was interesting. Even today, in some of the talks, there was someone who said, I've got this very, very difficult client, whatever difficult, and my thoughts were, why do you have this difficult client? If it's so difficult, why haven't you referred them on? So I'm starting to ask all the questions beneath the questions. And this is a part of my life always. But I think that it initially came as an actor, because that's what you were always looking for. You're given insufficient dialogue, and you have to find an entire human being in that insufficient dialogue, which they may lie, they may fabricate, they may exaggerate, and you still have to make a human being. So that was the good training. It was the perfect training for it. And really the nature of curiosity, I started out, the first book I wrote was The Win-or-Loser World Theory, which is about how the brain is affected by externalizing our valuations. So it was kind of what was wrong, kind of what was the problem. And I called the Win-or-Loser World problem. In it, I alluded to the alternative place, which I called the creative world. And I thought that was okay, but I wasn't really happy with it. And I wrote a bit of the stuff, and some of the things that are in the curiosity approach now were gestated and born in that book. And I just continued to follow the study. And really, it just emerged. It emerged from a technical point of view I was looking at all the things that we need to make a happy life. We need to have serotonin producing so that we reduce our fears. We need to have dopamine actioning so that we can be positive anticipation. We need to brighten up our prefrontal cortex with norepinephrine and acetylcholine. And we need to also get a sense of pleasure and reward when we're satisfied and happy with things, which comes from our periaqueductal grey with the endomorphins. And I'm looking at all this collection of things, and I'm researching and reading constantly in the literature. And as it comes out, curiosity, in the limited research that there is, stimulates all those things.
Yes.
The curious state is toward, it's fearless, it's acutely aware, it's acutely focused. And I thought, okay, this is why it is fundamental, because curiosity sets the brain up with the biochemical milieu, which then makes things possible. So if we're starting to try and heal someone from a traumatic state, that's going to be very difficult. As Einstein said, you can't solve a problem from the same state in which it was caused.
Yeah.
And of all the states that I have thought about and investigated, curiosity is the purest state of mental preparedness for change, growth, and development.
You know, so many of Erickson's transcripts begin with him saying, "I'm curious," or "and you can be curious." And that's certainly not unintentional, I think. And so if a client has that curiosity peaked in the session, do you find that alone just opens the gateway to any type of theoretical orientation or technique? Or
Curiosity is a state of mind and a state of being upon which everything works, upon which everything else works. So it doesn't really matter what your therapeutic approach is, what your particular preference and what your particular skill is. You add a curiosity element to that, and that will alter it into this, what I think is a heightened state, what I consider to be. But what's interesting in the investigations of curiosity is that what I also found as I was studying it is that people didn't get the full story. So curiosity has a story to it. And the one that we're most familiar with, the part of the curiosity story that we're most familiar with, is curiosity for not knowing stuff. A curiosity and in the literature there was a fellow, Jemison, and he called it curiosity for deficit, which sounds rather horrible. But curiosity for not knowing. And our education systems are based around that. Quiz shows. Everybody likes to have I don't know that, or they like to go, I do know that, that's the answer. And it's lovely. Curiosity for this knowing is a really important aspect. But there's another part of curiosity, and that's a curiosity just for in the moment, and that's really play. Whereas curiosity for deficit is for a period of time, but it starts at the not knowing and ends at the knowing. Curiosity for play is in the moment, and you just play and then you stop. And curiosity for play is full of possibility, is full of I don't know where it's going to go. That led me to think, so what is it that really piques my curiosity point? And I thought, it is that possibility. And not just the in-the-moment discovery that you get in play, which is great. And it's not the knowledge that you gain from study and research. It's when you take those things and you put them together and you create something more. You create a meaning, you create a purpose, or you create an idea, or you open a doorway into an avenue that you hadn't yet imagined. And that now I very simply call the third element of the triangle. And I think it's a triangle, it's not a divisible, these aren't divisible. It's curiosity for possibility. And that's what Erickson was on about all the time. When he said, I'm curious about this, was a little bit of curious for knowledge, a little bit of curious for play, but he was always curious for what might emerge, what might come from it, what might become.
What role does improvisation play in your work?
Yeah, gee. This is actually where a lot of people I teach have difficulty. Because fundamentally, everything is improvisation.
Right.
Putting it in your wonderful dialect, in the American dialect. Improvisation is actually how we most enjoyably live. Now, improvisation is not just making it up as you go along. Improvisation is the utilization of all the skills, the embracing of the environment, the bringing in of your knowledge and experience, the playful adventure, all leading towards a possibility, bringing out the greater possibilities and eventually attaining one. So actually everything's improvisation. And a good example that's really simple to give you an idea is the thing that we are utilizing right at this very moment, which is language, is an improvisation.
Right.
We have sounds that combine into words, we have words that collect into phrases and sentences. And what makes human language so exciting is you don't have to learn every sentence. You don't have to learn every phrase. What we do is we learn fundamentals, we learn the elements of the construction, and then we improvise. And everything you have done, even those sounds you just made then, those non-verbal sounds, they were improvisations. Why did you say just then? Because it felt right, it was good, and it encouraged me, and so on and so forth. What people can't see is you're also adding body language, which is brightness of eye and shaking of heads. These are all improvisations. So we actually are in the collected experience of improvisation, but what we do is we try and we fear that.
Yes. Yeah.
And so we try and be predictable, and we try and do the same thing, and we try and make it our safety on the basis of reproduction, rather than our safety on the basis of belief in our knowledge and our experience. That leaves open other questions, and perhaps I should leave you to ask another one now, because that's sort of at a point.
When you just said that, that's just, for me, that clicked in my brain, because I preach way too much about allowing oneself to improvise and be in the moment when you're doing therapy, and to kind of, theories are nice, but they kind of get in the way. But the way you put it, how everything that's happening right now between us is improvisation, to me, that's, in my mind, that frees up other areas that maybe I would have been more hesitant, because it's like, it's like saying I'm afraid to walk. I might be afraid to walk down a dangerous street that I know is dangerous, but I'm not afraid to walk, period. And when you say, you got to learn to improvise to a counselor, to a therapist, to a psychologist, it's like you say, this fear, oh my God, I'm flying without a net. What am I going to do? But we're not, because we're doing it all the time.
And this fear is exactly what one of my students he was a very experienced therapist on the masterclass, and he said, wow, Richard, this is so testing, because I have to leave the security of doing the steps that I'm used to, and I'm actually adding in a step. And we were in our final session and just reviewing some of the various bits and pieces. Some people were bringing in some cases, and they were actually utilizing some of the therapies that I've been teaching them, Mira Hansen-Moniz Rossi, and my arbitrary mental mapping, which is a brand new therapy or procedure or technique that I've developed. And they were saying something, and they got to the point where they were stuck in the therapy, and I just started to go, you could have, maybe if you did this with the hands, or if you did this with the, or if you used these words, and maybe that. And he stopped and half jokingly said, can't you just write all these creative ideas you have down so that we have a book where we can go to? And again, what he was describing was his tradition of being in the method, in the book, in the prescription, but his desire to let go. And anyway, now he's one of my most enthusiastic supporters. It's very exciting.
Full convert.
Yeah, freaked out, but
Yeah.
converted.
That's a curious state too. Sometimes getting freaked out, as long as it's not too scary. But can sometimes apprehension fuel curiosity? What do you feel about
Well, here's
that?
the things. What turns curiosity off? And it's the way you go into it. Curiosity is really a part of our social brain. It's not a part of our sympathetic nervous system. System. So when you're in defense and fighting the saber-toothed tiger, there's no curiosity there. And it's not in those very low areas, as we see, talking really about the polyvagal theory here, in those low areas of parasympathetic where you panic and collapse. But it's a state that you can introduce into these low-level sympathetic areas where you start getting apprehensive, you start getting a bit freaky, you start getting a bit scared. And if you introduce curiosity, and the way I do it most simply is go, oh, that's interesting. I'm getting apprehensive. Wow, what's that all about? And then we talk about the three essential actions in a second. But there's a natural way of doing it, as different from what we tend to do, is we go, I'm getting apprehensive. Oh my God, I'm apprehensive. This is apprehensive. This is bad. Something bad's going to happen. I'm apprehensive. Oh no, now I'm actually scared. Now I'm freaked out. Now I'm fearful. Oh my God, now my client. Oh, I've got a client. I've got to get better. Pull myself together. Your client. Oh no, just pull out a theory. It's going. Don't worry. And of course, your client then turns around and says, "Can I help you?"
Yeah, I know.
Which is happens
way too often.
too often.
Well, how do we instill in people to me, what I'm hearing is to be curious, we have to trust.
Yeah, it does require trust, but what I'm suggesting is that when you move into the curious state of mind, you are more trusting. So to trust first before you get curious, that's not what. Curious is the foundation of the frame.
Okay, yeah.
So if I'm not sure I trust you, and I don't trust you, and then I start, do I trust myself trusting you? Then you go in a spiral of downward, you move into fearfulness, you move into concern, and you move into sympathetic systems.
Right.
And most of our social sympathetic systems are fearfulness, as different from the what we're designed for as a saber-toothed tiger jumping out from behind a rock, and we fight them for 20 minutes or die, and away we go. But we move into fearfulness, and that turns curiosity off.
Right.
So those stresses and strains and those negative responses to traumas, those negative emotions, Panksepp talks about them, fear, rage, panic, grief, they are turns off of curiosity. So you then have to turn them back on. And the way as I was doing it was before, to become curious about the negative emotion or the destructive emotion or the damaging event. And to say that thing, wow, that's interesting, I'm apprehensive. Now the second of the three essential actions, as I call them, is to go always, what you see on the surface, there's depth to it. So what's the message? What's this problem? What's this thing trying to tell me? What's it leading me to become aware of? For example, pain is a very generalized thing. It's something that jumps up and says, pay attention. It doesn't say what to pay attention to. You then have to investigate this. Pay attention and investigate this. Same as it is with our negative emotions, with depression and anxiety and all these things. It's just saying, pay attention and investigate this. Now I'm suggesting that you go, it's interesting, you're depressed, I'm paying attention. Now, I wonder what this is telling me. And suddenly I wonder, I'm curious, I've shifted because I'm changing my brainwaves, I'm changing the flow of energy information in my brain, and I'm opening up focus of attention, I'm opening up the possibility of problem solving. That's one of the, so you can have curiosity for possibility can actually encourage you to act on curiosity for knowing. So they feed off each other. And that last one that you want to do, that last step, then just falls out of there. Okay, I've got myself interested in wonders. I'm seeing that there's other issues. Now something has to happen. What has to happen is something new. What do I create? What do I change? What do I do differently? Where do I take this? And from a therapist's point of view, what therapeutic process do I do? And I'll just give you an example of how when you're curious, the thing that you trust most is yourself. You open up your trust in yourself. Now, I don't know whether you've seen them. I know some others who may be listening have seen them. I do a chalkboard. Every week I've got a little chalkboard. My lovely wife brought me this chalkboard, and I write a sayings for one of my books or something that's going on. And I come from a conversation. I just put on a chalkboard, life is not like, and I drew a set of scales. Life is not like a set of scales. Life is really like, and I drew a picture of a mobile, where they've got all the different things balancing out different places. My client comes at, I did that at 7:30 in the morning. My client comes at 8 o'clock in the morning for the first session, so all you people who start at 10, lazy people. No, he just likes early, I come in early. And he walked in, and we're talking away, and he said, I like your chalkboard. I said, oh, yeah. I said, because life isn't like a set of scales, is it? He said, no. And we then put on a mobile structure of a longer stream and 2 or 3 things coming down. And he said, oh, there's my parents' stuff there. And he said, and there's my friend's stuff there. There's my other issue there. I don't know where my relationships go. We actually found out where that went later on.
Okay.
And we actually created in that moment between him and me one of the curiosity approach therapeutic things, which is mobile therapy. So it's a visual thing of creating on a mobile all the elements. And the secret came when he said, my problem is not what's on the mobile. My problem is where the fulcrum is. And because I have such weight in my parents' problem, I've got the fulcrum way down near them. So I can shed them as long as I move the fulcrum. So it was a wondrous experience, and we did it together. And he's stoked. He says, wow, I helped create a therapy.
Yeah, he did. And totally unplanned.
Totally unplanned, and allowing the system to organize itself out of all the realistic potentials and realities and knowledge and experience. I don't think I could have imagined what I did in that day 3, 4, 5, 6 years before. But that doesn't matter. What I would have imagined back then would have been what I imagined then. But now, of course, what I come up with is fairly deep and productive and expansive.
Well, tying in the whole idea of trust and curiosity, this, clarifies for me is every training I've done where I'm saying, okay, whether it's a hypnosis training, whether it's a, resource-directed training, it's always that fear of trust. And so trying to directly or indirectly say, get people to trust, it's sounding better and easier to me to actually just get them curious about things.
And because this turns off the win or loser world. The win or loser world turns curiosity off. And it's not actually trust that we're worried about. It's fear of failure. It's fear of being denigrated. It's fear of being socially unacceptable.
Right, yeah.
And being socially rejected. And in the Win or Loser World book, How the Real World is Driving Us Crazy.
Yeah, which is excellent. I'm loving this book, by the way.
And I describe in there the 7 frameworks, mental frameworks, that just give an idea.
Yeah.
And once you're in that framework, all 7 come into play. And none of the other ones do. And once you get out of it and you get in that creative, which I now know is the curious mind, all 7 come into play. And there are obvious things, like in the Win or Loser world, you're exclusive. You exclude things. Whereas in the curiosity world, you're inclusive. And in the another one that I really love in the Win or Loser world is everything's instruction. And instruction is always bad, because instruction is always assuming, if you're being instructed, the assumption is you're a loser and you're a failure, and the person who is instructing you is a success. So someone can even be being nicely giving you some information about something, and the win or loser mindset is going, don't you tell me what to do. I remember we had someone we worked with, and you'd say something like, "Oh, the coffee mug there." She said, "I didn't put it there."
Mhm.
You know, and that's
I think I was married to that person.
Yeah.
Okay.
But of course, in the curiosity world, everything is information.
Uh-huh.
Someone comes up and says, "Paul, you're an idiot,"
Uh-huh.
and you go, "Wow, that's so interesting. Let me see. I wonder if I am an idiot. Oh, I was a bit of an idiot there, but broadly not. Now, how interesting that you call me an idiot. What's that about you? You actually you came over to me. You don't know me. You're calling me an idiot. Sit down. Let's have a chat.
Mhm.
You know, I think I can help you with this."
Yeah.
And suddenly life is about, and when I say, "I think I can help you about this," or "we can make some change," that's curiosity for possibility.
Mhm.
I think we can make meaning and purpose out of this.
Mhm. When you're working with a client and as we all have, you're feeling like you're getting stuck. When you're starting to feel that stuck, do you get curious about being stuck, and does that open up possibilities?
Yeah, absolutely. The tendency when you work from a curious state all the time is that you tend not to get stuck,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you're always absorbing and engaging with the information and the changes as they're coming through.
Mhm.
But also when you're curious, you're interested, so you're also looking for the message under the problem. So you're getting stuck. Wow, what is this telling me, and what can I create? But the techniques that I've developed are specifically about being stuck, because I think being stuck in therapy is actually 90% of the problem.
Mm.
Mostly, we get with people 2 or 3 sessions, something major has occurred, we may go on for some more, but we know from the research, and Scott Miller brings a lot of this and explains, within the first 4 or 5 sessions, you've either made a breakthrough or a shift or a change, or you're really not going down the right path.
Right.
But today we were talking with Ruben Pathology, and he was saying he does 1 session therapy, because there was this wonderful, I don't know whether beknownst or unbeknownst to them, but the receptionist, people coming in, and she'd say, "Oh, I see you're, based on this form, your intake form, this is usually about 5 sessions." And then somebody else would come in and she'd say, "Oh, based on what you've done here, in my experience, this is usually about 10 sessions." And she's probably just preparing them for what's going on. Then they went back and they researched all the notes and bits and pieces, and they found those people that were told that they would take 5 sessions, the most work began on the 4th session. And those people who were told 10 sessions, the most work began on the 9th session.
So that expectancy, yeah. Wow.
You know, so those things are very important. So certainly, if you're getting stuck, stop doing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
The key is, do you have anything else, any more arrows in the quiver?
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes the skill of therapy. This is why we go to conferences. This is why you and I are here at Ericsson, and it's 4 days where you go to workshop after variation after change, and 2 years from now, you're suddenly sitting with a client and you go, "I knew a fellow who went in and was told that it would take 5 sessions," and suddenly you're in a story.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
That's what makes it exciting for the therapist and productive for the client.
Yeah. The 2 terms, I just kind of want you to, get your take on it. It's a recursive pattern: improvise, utilize, improvise, utilize. Give me your thoughts about that.
Well, as an actor, and also my first degree was in linguistics,
Mm-hmm.
I think semantics are overplayed as specifics, as we get too detailed. Utilizing, though, in this context, if you're looking for the subtleties of difference, utilizing is taking on board the opportunities and what is being presented and what is given to you.
Mm-hmm.
Improvisation is one of the ways in which you utilize the utilization.
Mm-hmm.
So you can improvise. Sometimes you can actually settle and sit with something for a while.
Yeah.
So it depends on the client. But utilization is really absorbing and engaging with all the potentials that are being presented to you in the environment. And we did the little experiment today in the class, and you were so kind to be the guinea pig, where I asked you to come out for a process. You came out and you sat down and settled in, and I said, we're now going to begin. You looked at me expectantly, and I then said, we're going to pause a moment. And I turned to everybody and said, no, this is not where we begin. We began when I said, would somebody please volunteer to come out? Yeah. And then we started to review, and over a period of 10 or 15 minutes, people started to come up with all kinds of parameters and frameworks and things that they could utilize out of that first few minutes of various actions of yours and mine and so on and so forth. Whereas most people were going to start therapy from when I said, let's start therapy. And then we're in the dark.
Yeah. All this potential, doesn't get utilized.
That's right. So improvisation is what you do with the elements. And improvisation in the context of therapeutic practice, I think broadly, but certainly in the context of therapeutic practice, isn't just a avant-garde, anything goes, we're out there happening and doing. Improvisation is something that, when we're working with a client, operates in our heads. And there's quite a few things that I improvise in my head which are edited. They say, no, that's actually not going to happen. No, actually, that's not going to happen. But if you remember today, there was one of the participants, one of the people in the group, we were talking about the little tissue that I had. And she made a comment about blowing the nose in the tissue and so forth. And we found out that she actually has a lot of distasteful stuff going on in her life. In that one little improvising with language and trusting and freely letting out, she actually gave us the key to a treatment process with her. I'm not sure what it would be, but I thought, wow, that's an extraordinary thing to say. So I'm utilizing that, and then I'll improvise, well, where do we go with that? And then edit those in my own mind to find the one that comes out. But sometimes I will say to a client, I say, I don't know what you think of this, and I'm just, how about this? And it's wonderful when you do that and you give the client's in the right space, when the client can say, no, I don't like that. And you go, excellent. That's so interesting. Wow, I've really come up with something that isn't appropriate. Terrific. What do I need to learn about that? Everything flows. I just see everything as a springboard. You say hello to me and I'm springboarding off it, because the way you said it, the look on the face, how you were standing, the lilt on your what the colour of your hair was at the time, where it was parted, what the shirt was wearing. Life is so exciting. I can almost, I sometimes have to pause, and it's called sleep. And I really like it.
Gets in the way.
Sometimes. But then it becomes valuable.
No, it does.
I never go to bed bored.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, what about behavioral flexibility? I noticed great therapists, not only are they just generally seem to be curious, but they have a lot of behavioral flexibility in themselves, so they adapt to the client. Certainly your training as an actor has prepared you for that.
Yeah.
How do you try to help people who come to you for training to kind of loosen up and have a little more parameter without losing themselves?
Yeah. This is an easy thing, because you have to work on it yourself. Being client responsive is, of course, a fundamental thing that is coming in now. And people are finding it a lot. They don't like that. They like to be, the client has to respond to me, and that causes all kinds of secondary barriers or difficulties. But being very client responsive, I mean, you can tell when you know me, I'm able to string a few words together without too great difficulty. But I had a client who came in, and for 18 weeks, she was elderly and had suddenly she was her partner, a marriage of 50 years broke up. And for 18 weeks, she retold the story of her life in the first person instead of in the second person or third person. And she's I and me rather than us. I hardly said anything other than hello and, minimal cues. Then I've had other clients who've come in and said, I want you to explain how the brain works, and they sit back and take notes.
Yeah.
That I think was the biggest learning, and it was the most difficult one for me to piece together and connect back to acting. This client responsive, and how to stop myself being the dominant experience and to allow myself to enjoy the opportunity to be chatty, to be quiet and then chatty, to be heart and soul felt and soft. I did one session where the client came in, quite a few childhood traumas. She was hot, she blew her nose, she got another tissue which she put over the top of her face. We did the whole session with the tissue over the top of her face. I said nothing but basic minimal cues and supportive things. She said maybe a dozen sentences in the whole session. And later on she said that was the most she'd ever said. And the most that we'd ever said.
Yeah.
So you can never know. You just have to respond.
Mm-hmm.
And trust yourself.
Yeah.
And so we do workshops on that. So we do responsiveness stuff. And
That's great.
and when I'm teaching the mirror hands and universities, I'm constantly walking around saying, shh, 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 because they're talking away, helping, reflecting, and doing that.
Right.
And yet the client, you could see the clients working in their own mind, or they're wanting to say something, and the therapist is busily trying to be helpful, and so it's good.
Yeah, Stephen Brooks from England, he lives now in Thailand, amazing Ericksonian hypnotist, hypnotherapist, had Rossi years back, I think, for a workshop, and was the hands thing, and he said that a lot of people who were watching it made the mistake of thinking it was so simple.
Yes.
And he says there's so much profound things going on, and it's, I guess, that therapeutic how to put it, just intuition to know, okay, to just allow and to be able to step back, because sometimes we have to be directive, and sometimes in getting out of the way. Stories of Erickson, being the grandfather, and then next session you tell somebody, you're going to sit there and you're going to shut your mouth, and just hard, but having that kind of flexibility.
It's interesting. I mean, one of the things in the mirror hands, and certainly Erickson does it as well, coming from there, but we use a lot of mirror hands, is the incomplete sentence. And people love to fill the vacuum.
Yeah.
So, but therapists are always reflecting and saying, I'm listening to you and I've looked at and what you're saying to me, it seems to me that you're feeling very depressed.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, sometimes clients say, oh yeah, sort of like I must be, you're the thing. Whereas actually they're sitting there saying, well, not really. Whereas in the open-ended sentence, you'd say, yes, wonderful, I've listened, and I'm feeling that you're, and they'll fill that gap.
Yeah.
And I find that almost everybody I've trained struggles with that incomplete sentence. And I'm going there and they're madly doing full sentences but it's one of the most powerful. So there's very specific, particular techniques in the mirror hand which people miss. I have come to the Erickson conferences over my 11th year, and I have gone to watch the mirror hands reproduced every year. I teach it. Ernest has given me, absolute imprimatur to be a representative of the approach. But I will come and I will sit at Ernest's feet and I will watch again to see what I missed, what I strengthened, and that I think is the difference with therapists. The education points we do, and I've had people say, "Oh, I can't come to your workshop because I've completed my education points for the year," and I say, "Okay," but then I think you're 10 hours or 20 hours or 25 hours or whatever it is. I mean, what do you do? I mean, 150 hours a year, this is 40 hours for a start. And you don't blink. You think, oh, do you want to come and do another one of those workshops? You're really good at this. Do you want to come? And you go, yes.
Yeah.
And we need more of that.
Oh, yeah. what is the biggest challenge for you? Not just as a therapist, but as a teacher of therapists, in people grasping what you're trying to get across?
Gee, that's a goodie. Because it's a complex answer. I have some dissatisfactions because I'm do a lot of neuroscience, which I thought made sense. I didn't know you didn't have to know about the brain to treat the brain. I thought you had to know about the brain to treat the brain. But I actually said it to someone today who came up talking about Ernie Rossi's lecture with genomics, and I said, a lot of the problem is people just don't know enough. And they don't know enough. And then when they're encouraged to know more, they have all kinds of, they basically, I hear there's a degree of, I didn't get into this profession to do all that sort of stuff.
Right.
I could have become a doctor or a lawyer. So I got in this to be a bit easier. And so that's one of the problems that frustrates me. But I don't think that's a major one. That's just one that I think is worth airing. Although it's not something I wander around, because I think therapists do wonderful work, and some therapists who have very little technical knowledge are just brilliant, But it's also when you're teaching a class, you have 20, 30 people in there. They're all different, and being able to say it in such a way that every single one of them gets it is very difficult. And my way of dealing with that is that I make myself permanently available. So I'm available before, I'm available at breaks, I'm available at lunch. I don't go off into the lunchroom, but I probably should, because it's a pretty hard day.
It is.
But that's how I compensate for the individual needs. And the other one is then my own issues of where I speak from within the framework of my own existence.
Right.
And so some people just don't understand me, and some people are completely into me and get me straight away. And we're very simpatico. Other people, you might be sitting next to someone and say, "Oh, that Richard Hill, that was rubbish what he said," and you go, "Well, I thought it was pretty good."
Yeah.
So accepting that is just a natural state, and it's one of the possibilities. This is what's important about curiosity for possibility, is that it's not about curiosity for great stuff. It's curiosity for possibility. The possibility of wonderful things, the possibility of difficult things, the possibility of terrible things, the possibility of everything, and then remaining always looking for the meaning, which I guess Viktor Frankl is the greatest example. He was a great exponent of curiosity for possibility. Even when he's being almost kicked to death in a concentration camp, he's looking for how is it possible to survive, and where can I go, and what can I create from this?
When people come into this field, I found that overall, most of us, we want to help people. But I'm wondering, and maybe this is my curiosity, if people would maybe be a little more really truly curious about why they want to help people, what that would open up.
That's great. I mean, I've canvassed this sort of thinking. I don't think that's a big great idea of mine. I think that's the real opportunity of these sorts of conferences. It's not just to go along and learn. It's to go along and learn and wonder why you didn't know that. Wonder why sometimes you wonder why you sat through that 2-hour section, which is really good. And this idea of what we're all about, and this is what Scott Miller is doing a lot of his work now. What makes you a good therapist? What makes you excellent? And self-criticism and assessments and looking at the results of what you do, always to say, I wonder why I'm doing this. And a regular reassessment of, I wonder why I'm doing this, is a really good idea. But equally, when you have a fabulous resolution, or a client that breaks through, or someone who suddenly has magic, and you feel that that joy and professional as well as personal satisfaction. Also remember, that's why you do it.
Yeah. That's you've given me so much. I don't even realize how much you've given me just in this little chit chat we've had. So I'm going to give you one last question. Okay, this is a big question.
This is usually the doozy about the meaning of life
Yeah,
or something.
yeah. Would you play Hamlet again?
We were talking about it earlier tonight. Given the opportunity, without hesitation. I actually thought about it. I thought, would I stop doing all the work I'm doing to have that opportunity to act again? And yeah, I would.
Yeah, because I'm wondering how much you would bring to it now.
Oh gosh, yeah. Although now I'm probably going to play King Lear, I think. I'm not sure of the Hamlet anymore.
I think there's a play also he wrote, Richard something. I don't know if you'd be the right one.
Scottish
for that.
humpback. Yeah.
So tell me the best way people can get in touch with you.
Well, there's a whole bunch of things I'm trying to do in expanding the process of what I'm doing. Certainly I come and lecture where I can, but I'm not at that level where people are paying my airfares and so on and so forth. I don't know whether I ever will be, or whether even some of those who say they do. But I love getting out and about, and it is difficult. So what I'm doing is I'm using the internet quite a lot. Now, there's a couple of websites that are relevant. richardhill.com.au. That's pretty easy. Go in there and you find out a lot about me, and it's got little videos about therapeutic styles and various conversations. But I actually just launched a brand new program, which is kind of basically giving you what's in my head in small bite-sized chunks. Now, I'm calling it Your Amazing Brain 3.0. The reason I call it 3.0 is because 1.0 in the sort of computer languages, 1.0 is we figure out what it is. 2.0, we figure out how it works. And in 3.0, we start making the connections and put it together. And that's where we are. So this framework of Your Amazing Brain 3.0 is bringing together the important things of curiosity, connection, and and satisfying that curiosity for knowing, to some degree the curiosity for play, but all underneath it is into play the curiosity for possibility. And so you can certainly come into the website, and this one is youramazingbrain30.com. So I couldn't figure out all the dots and things, so it's youramazingbrain30.com. And there's a bunch of sort of introductory videos that explain how it all works. But basically, and you're very lovely, you've come in and you've subscribed.
I love it.
Every week you get one week you get a brain blast, which is something about the brain and how to apply that to life, how to make meaning with that. And on the other week you get what I call an active blast, because activity is what generates our genes, it's what stimulates our body. We're an activity based, and I do an activity of the body, an activity of the brain, but also an activity of the being. And to give an example, we do one activity, don't take the escalators or the lift, walk up the stairs. But for the brain, while you're walking up the stairs, imagine that you're walking up the Eiffel Tower or the Empire State Building, or you're walking with somebody else, with a dragon. And for the being, if somebody walks past you on the way down the stairs or walks past you on the way up, look up, smile at them, maybe say hello. And those three exercises, and we repeat those in 100 different ways, are what it's all about. Activity of the body, imagination of the brain, and connection of the being. And that changes you from a genetic level up, without you even having to try or think about it. So that's what we do with there. What do we do? We say it's like $4 or $5 a month. Have a cup of coffee with Richard once a week.
And the information you're giving, you're concise with it, and anybody can, even I teach psychology, so we can talk a lot about the brain and I get into that. But even somebody who doesn't know much, I mean, you don't bombard them with jargon to where they go, okay, enough, my God. I mean, just gee, and you give them the info, but I mean, it takes like 6-7 minutes some of these videos, but it's just so much application.
Yeah, and that was the thing, to make it applicable for everyone. And those that are more interested, well, you take notes and go off and look it up.
Yeah.
Those that have had enough, that's fine. And it's so business people, school kids, they're really enjoying this, saying, "Wow, I can actually be connected to other people and be happy." Woohoo!
Yeah, I hear that's a good thing.
I think it's a good thing too. A lot of people don't think it's possible. It's
Well,
no curiosity.
Yeah, no curiosity. That's it. Well, listen, I want to thank you, Richard, just as your dear friend, and I'm just so honored you talked to me tonight. And it's just anytime I get to spend with you, whether in person or online, is always just a pleasure. And I just wish you the best, and thank you so much.
Well, after that, what can I say? But thank you, and yeah, great buddies. I love it.
Awesome, excellent. And you got a beautiful wife sitting here too.
Yes, I know.
So
Patient.
we didn't
gorgeous
introduce her,
shoes.
but she's here. Thanks so much.
Thanks, folks.
All right.
Thank you for listening to Potential Not Pathology with Dr. Paul J. Leslie. If you enjoyed the show, check out our website at potentialnotpathology.com, where you will find programs and articles showcasing unique and creative therapeutic applications.